everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Mark Lesko Podcast. Joined by Austin, as always, it being Penn State related, and special guest Tyler Smith, former Penn State basketball player and professional basketball player. We're going to get into that. I wanted to interview Tyler because I've known Tyler for a long time, and I used to work for one of his businesses in State College. And once I got to know Tyler and learn about his story, I was really interested in interviewing him because if you know Tyler, Tyler's a great guy, and he wrote a book called For Traveling. It's called, and it's not just because I know Tyler and I know how he is as a person. That's one of the best books I've ever read, honestly. And your story is not only funny but very interesting and inspiring. It's from beginning to end. I mean, I honestly couldn't put it down. I'm not making that up. It's a great book, Tyler.
Oh, thanks, man. I mean, I'm no professional author, but I was happy to just get something down on paper. And in the beginning, I was like, I just want to get this out there. Maybe only a handful of people will read it, but I thought it'd be fun to be able to kind of share with my kids as they get older. And when I wrote it, like they were a little too young to really read it or understand it. But as they've gotten older, my two older ones have read it. One's 15, one's 11, and just to see them kind of giggle as they turn pages and hear these stories about mom and dad going through was a lot of fun for me. So it was a fun project to work on. But you're very kind. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Absolutely, I really did. And we were just kind of talking about it, Tyler. When I met you, you had the cryotherapy and Victory gym in State College, and I remember at first I volunteered because I just wanted to work there, and because I thought you were one of the only places in the state of Pennsylvania that had it. I think the only other two places were like professional sports teams, from what I remember. So
Yeah.
to have that in State College was crazy that there was one in State College. That you had the option to actually go to one. Um, that was cool.
Yeah, it was really neat. I mean, we were the second one in Pennsylvania, and most of these were in big cities. I had first heard about them because the Dallas Mavericks were using them in 2011 when they made their championship run with Dirk Nowitzki and those guys, and they were raving about it for recovery. And as an athlete, I was always trying to recover faster, always sore, and I'm like, minus 250 degrees, like let's try it out. That sounds miserable, but maybe for 3 minutes I could do it. And I flew down to Florida because that was the closest one at the time, and tried it out. I'm like, this thing's awesome. I feel great. So ended up bringing it up to the State College and putting in Victory's gym. So we helped a lot of people. I mean, I think it was something where initially I thought it was just for athletes and for recovery, but there was way more people that had chronic pain issues and inflammation that just from everyday living. Then we actually saw way more people for that than we did even athletes. So but it was really neat to see, what's capable and with something kind of crazy outside the box like that. And now we see a lot more cold plunging all over social media and stuff, and people doing that. But the cryotherapy was a lot of fun for a little while. It was really great having you too. And we were joking earlier about, man, I needed somebody strong to be there and help, because we would use liquid nitrogen, and they come in these 800 pound tanks that you have to maneuver, and it was never easy. But that was kind of the secret sauce, getting that liquid nitrogen and pumping it through and turning it into the gas.
Yeah, they. I do remember doing that, moving those things. Because there was, of course, there was the ledge of death, where you had to get it up over this little ledge to get it in the door. So you had to pull it from the parking lot to the ledge, and then you had to kind of run a little bit and pop it up over to get it up over.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
funny.
I know. As long as that thing didn't run over your foot, thankfully we didn't
Yeah.
have any injuries, but that could have been kind of disastrous. Had to be careful.
Yep. Yeah. And now you have cool sculpting. You were talking about that. Um, you want to talk a little bit about that, Tyler?
Yeah, sure. So the cryotherapy kind of led me into this other world of more like a body sculpting thing. It's called CryoSkin is the name of the machine we have. And then there's another machine we picked up as well called endospheres. And the big idea is basically just trying to reduce fat cells. It's kind of like you're doing an ultrasound, if you've ever seen that, with a wand and some gel. And you do a massage technique over the body parts that you're trying to slim down, but really effective. We see, a lot of people coming in that just love it. Whether they're just having a hard time um, with their diet or their exercise, maybe not targeting certain areas. It's another tool. It's not some magic wand that will just automatically fix everything. But if you use it in conjunction with other good healthy habits, it can have a really nice effect for people. But I saw a lot of these places that had the cryo saunas starting to pick up these as an extra tool to use to help people. And I was like, that does look neat. So we kind of went in on it with another woman here in town and her husband, Jim and Linda Pooter, really nice people. They're over at they're at De-Stress Station. So they do a lot of massage therapy there. But now we have our CryoSkin endospheres over there too in Boalsburg.
Awesome. Yeah, I've heard. Austin, have you seen much about that stuff? I've heard great things about it.
Which one? The
Like
cryotherapy or the
well,
sculpting?
the sculpting. I know you know about cryotherapy, but the cool sculpting.
Yeah, the little bit here and there. Like kind of like Tyler said, with the conjunction of all the other kind of important factors in place, requisite exercise, requisite diet, kind of lifestyle habits, it can be an additional tool you can add in. It can potentially be helpful with kind of eliminating some of those permanent fat cells. The biology behind it's a little more interesting. Potentially, there can be some fat cell regrowth. There can be some permanent loss. Um, it's not really relative to anything with like liposuction or anything like that. Totally different, non-invasive methodology. The one thing I did notice, just for some folks that I know personally that have had some of those types of things where you're creating more space, sometimes you get really wonky things that happen with water and water settling in those open spaces. But as far as efficacy, yeah, I mean, it's totally fine thing to do as long as it's under the direction of a professional.
Yeah, I will say with the cryotherapy, Tyler. Sure you remember I always had lower back pain, and that was pretty much cured from stretching more and stuff like that. And I got an inverter table, but man, that really helped my lower back pain. It was like gone after I used that. It was crazy. So yeah, I miss doing that. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was really neat. We had some guys come in. I had one guy come in after an ACL repair, like a week out, and your knee is still really, really swollen after something like that. And I was like, let's measure and just see if it does anything. And I mean, the guy literally after 3 minutes in that, like it shrunk like an inch and a half. It was crazy. And then he texted me pictures later in the day. He's like, it's like still like shrinking because it kind of was like just pulling all
Yeah,
that extra fluid and inflammation away. So really cool to see. And of course, all kinds of universities now have these. Penn State never ended up getting one, which I thought was interesting. We're in a day and age where like the newest cutting edge thing, is always pretty cool to have, if nothing more than just a recruiting tool.
yeah,
But I mean, you had like Alabama had this, and Auburn, and all these places were getting them. So it's I'm glad that it helped guys like you and others too. It was really cool.
Tyler, we'll get into your book here that I showed earlier. Like I said, I don't want to give too much away. You can find it on Amazon. You said called for traveling. Sounds like that's the best place to get it. And like I said, I can't recommend it more. Really good book. But Tyler, just tell us about your life, kind of what you cover in the book. Just some points here and there from your time at Penn State to your time in the professionally overseas. I mean, you were everywhere. So
Yeah, I ended up being a lot more well traveled than I ever expected. I grew up in Chicago, came to Penn State, and played basketball there from 98 to 02. And the funny story I'll always remember is I was, as a high school kid, I was getting a bunch of letters from different colleges and stuff. And um, the first one I got from Penn State, they actually spelled my name wrong on the letter. I still have it. It was like Schmidt or something. I was like, man, I don't know how you mess up Smith, but
Yeah, seriously.
I was like, well, I'm definitely not going there. They messed up my name. It's a football school. Like, why would I
Yeah.
go there? But as the recruiting process went along, I was like, oh, this actually is pretty cool. Like, I like these guys, and went to visit and just really liked the players, really liked the coaches. And so it ended up being an awesome fit for me. And then after Penn State, I was nowhere on anybody's radar for the NBA. That was not my expectation. My whole goal, like a win for me, and my dream was just to play professionally somewhere. And I knew guys were playing overseas. Like at the time, Pete Lisicki was kind of a big name for Penn State basketball. He was playing in Italy, and he'd been in Switzerland. And he would write our trainer all these funny stories of like living overseas. So we'd be like getting our ankles taped before practice, and our trainer just like comes cracking up out of his little office there. We're like, well, what's going on? He's like, man, you got to read this email from Pete. And it's just all the stuff that would happen living overseas that we just have no concept about because we're in such a nice um, uh, comfortable place in terms of facilities, right? You've got like great practice gyms, and all the gear is brand new, and you're getting new shoes and all this stuff. And like you go overseas and you're like taping your own ankles, you don't know if you're going to get paid from like 1 month to the next in some countries. And it's a totally different world. Your facilities, like you might be practicing in like a junior high gym, or like who knows. And I mean, some of the floors I played on, like they weren't even wooden floors. They were like a concrete floor, or some kind of a you know all sport floor that had like 80 different color lines on it because they're playing like 19 different sports or something. And so it's when I left Penn State, and my first job was in Holland, and it was like really quick wake up call. Oh my gosh, like this is unbelievable. Like our locker room was literally just a brick room and like a wooden bench, and that was it. Like there was no lockers. You brought your own bag with all your stuff, and then you took your bag home. Like that, like there were showers, but they were awful. Like you don't want to shower, and it was kind of comical. And our home gym held like 1,200 people. So I'm coming from like the BJC, which is like 15,000 to 1,200. So it's definitely a big wake up call. And a lot of guys, they don't really survive overseas because it is so uncomfortable. You're so far away from family and everybody, and it can just feel really lonely, and kind of like almost like some guys get depressed over there. Like one guy I played with, super athlete. He was doing great for us the first half of the season, and just a real nice, fun loving guy. And then he kind of hurt his hand a little bit and was out a couple of games. And all of a sudden, like just his whole morale and just attitude was just like like a nosedive. And we're like, dude, what's wrong with this guy? And it was like, man, he just missed family. It was his first year overseas, and he couldn't hang with it. So I really learned a lot, like just how to adapt to different cultures and not try to make it the United States. The guys that were like just mad about everything. Well, this isn't how we do it back home. And this isn't, what I want it to be. It's like, you just got to go in there and be like, all right, what are we doing? This is your country, your world. Like, let me merge into your lane instead of trying to make it like home.
Tyler, what was the highest level that you played at?
So I ended up having the opportunity to go try out for the Utah Jazz. And I was about 4 years into my pro career. I'd been in Europe for a couple of years. I was in South America for a little while, and it was kind of a crazy story. But I went to like they called it like a draft camp, and they would invite 80 guys out to the middle of the woods in Oregon. And there was this facility there that I don't know if USA Basketball ran it, but it was some organization, And there was like a bunch of NBA guys that kind of like had their names basically on cabins like in this wooded area, and there was like this huge gym with like 3 courts, and they invited all the Chinese pro teams to come. And so they were probably, I don't know, 15 or 16 pro teams. These Chinese guys like the GMs and some owners and coaches. And you would play for a week. And then at the end of the week, they would rank you from 1 to 80, like how effective you are, whatever system they had. And then you would play games like they were going to do a draft at the end of the week and actually select guys that were there to go play in their pro league in China. And they would have a first round game with like projected first round picks, and like a second round game, third, fourth, on down to maybe like, I don't know, 5 or 6 rounds. So I got selected. I had really good stats that week and actually played really well. I think part of it was because I was like, whatever, man, I'm here to try and like win a job. Like it didn't matter that I was in the woods. But a lot of these other guys, they were like, man, I got no cell signal. I'm away from like everybody I know. I'm like, dude, it's only a few days. But these guys, like they couldn't handle it. And I'm just like, I was taking advantage of it and like just playing really hard. So I played really well. And I had a couple of coaches come up to me, American coaches, and they were like, hey man, get ready to like negotiate your salary. And China paid really well. They said, you're going to get picked like for sure, first, maybe second round. So the top 2 rounds, they they got automatic contracts in China. Um, and again, really good money. So I'm like, sweet, man. I couldn't wait because I'd had some jobs earlier, but they weren't super high paying. And a couple of them didn't work out. A couple of them didn't pay me.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, man, all right, this is the real deal. So they do the draft, and I don't get called until the third round. So I missed out on a contract, and I'm like, what happened? And they're like, I don't know, man. It didn't work out. So anyway, long story short, there was a guy there who comes up to me and is Rick Barry. And for like basketball historians, he played years ago in like 60s and 70s, but he's NBA Hall of Famer. He was one of the underhanded free throw guys, and kind of made that real famous. The last guy to kind of do that. And he says, "Hey man, it's just a shame that you didn't get picked, and it's a shame you're not in the NBA right now." And I'm like, dude, who is this guy? I feel like I've been in Holland. I was down in Uruguay like a couple of years. Like, what are you talking about? And he just had this belief that like I should be on an NBA roster somewhere. And I'm like, you're my new best friend. Like, he's like, I'm gonna make some calls for you. Do you mind? I'm like, you can call anybody you want, man. Like I'm not tied down anywhere. I'm just trying to keep playing and not go work at like Home Depot yet. I want to try and keep this basketball thing going. So he's like, I'm going to call Jerry Sloan and Pat Riley, who was with Miami Heat. I'm like, that sounds fantastic. Can you let me know how that goes? Like, do you want to be my agent? He's like, I want to be your agent. He's like, I just want to see you on a team. I'm like, you're amazing. So I get a call a couple weeks later from the Utah Jazz, and they're like, hey, we want to fly you out. Just come try out and meet you. I'm like, awesome. So I went out there, had a good 2-3 day kind of workout, and they said, okay, we'll let you know. And my workouts were done, and I'm just kind of back at the hotel, like, all right, nobody's calling me. Like, do I go get on a plane or do I just go back to the gym? And I'm like, I'm just going to go back to the gym. And, worst case, they're just like, yeah, why are you here? You can leave. But they didn't. They were like, hey, we're glad you showed up again. We want to invite you to training camp. And that's kind of like where you want to get to. Like, Summer League NBA is a really good step. But if you get the training camp, those are really coveted spots because you only get maybe, I don't know, 16, 17 guys for training camp typically. And so I think we had 17, maybe 18 that year. And so I'm like, this is insane. So I got like my own locker with my name on it. It was next to Derek Fisher, who played with the Lakers actually almost all of his career, but there was one year in there where he went over to the Jazz. I'm like, dude, I am next to Derek Fisher. There was like Carlos Boozer, Darren Williams. These guys are like NBA All-Stars. And I was 26. And the funny thing was a lot of these guys were younger than me, but they were, big name guys, obviously being in the NBA. And so it was such a fun experience to just have a taste. I didn't end up making the team, spoiler alert, but it was a great month or so I had in the preseason with those guys.
Man, the Jazz, like the teams. So I mean, you've seen The Last Dance, I'm sure, and man, the battles that they had, like Karl Malone, those guys on the Jazz. If I'm getting that right, I'm more of a
Yeah,
football guy,
yeah,
but yeah, man, like
yeah.
the
No, you're
battles that
spot
they
on.
had, like your era and the era before that in the '90s, like 2000s, even the 2010s, just unbelievable competition, basketball. What do you think about the NBA now, Tyler? I mean, I feel like it's a little watered down, if you will. It's just I feel like it's not the same.
Yeah, it's definitely evolved and it's gotten a lot more almost kind of European in a way because there's like in the 90s, I was a big Bulls fan growing up in Chicago and we had Tony Kukoc. He was like the big like foreign name and there weren't that many foreign guys. And he was like this big guy, like almost 7 feet tall, but he played like a guard. So that was unusual because any big guy, you just stuck him in the post at the time. But how crazy and how far the game has come when you got guys like Jokic on the Denver Nuggets, who's like, I don't know, 7'1" or 7'2", playing like a guard and like just, not real fast, but super effective. And then you got guys like Steph Curry launching threes from half court and making them. And so the game has really changed a lot. Um, I guess you could call it watered down. I don't know. It's if I'd say watered down, but it definitely has changed so much, over the years, and in some ways, kind of neat to see how it's evolved. I mean, they had that first of its kind where they did like an in-season tournament in the NBA, and that was kind of adopted from the European leagues also because when I was in different countries, like I'd be in Holland and we have our regular season and at the end you have playoffs and championship. But they would pause the season right in the middle and then just have like this tournament. And it was this really big deal, single elimination. And the first time I go, I'm like, why are we doing this tournament? Like, isn't that what we're like moving towards? And like, yeah, but it's the cup, it's the Dutch Cup, and I'm like, okay, like whatever. We're trying to beat the other team. That's all I know, But so they have little different ways of doing things over there. And like in soccer overseas, you know how you'll get relegated to like a league below if you don't do well. And it was the same thing with a lot of leagues in basketball. Like I was playing for a team in Italy, and we were in a preseason meeting. Our president like has this big speech to all our fans, and I can't understand anything. It's all in Italian, and I'm like, what do you say? And our coach, who was translating, was like, he says the season will be a success as long as we don't finish last. I'm like, whoa, okay, rousing, pump up speech, man. We're ready to go and not lose a lot of games, just some games, but not too many.
Well,
Because
Tyler,
some of these teams like that was it. That was their goal.
uh, one of my favorite stories from your book, and I'll just give this one kind of as a teaser, is when I believe it was Holland when you were almost ran out of gas. Because I've been there, we've all been there, where it was a story where you were coming back from I think a party and you were in the van. You had like the half the team with you in this van, and you kept passing these closed gas stations. It was like 3 a.m. and then you finally found one, and I was like, man, like I've been there. I know how heart wrenching that can be.
Yeah. It was the weirdest thing because in the U.S. like gas stations are usually 24/7. You got the
Yeah.
self pump, whatever. And man, it definitely. And I'm thinking the same thing. I hadn't been there long enough, I guess, to figure out that was not the case. And man, I literally like we run out of gas. You feel like the pedal going and nothing's happened. I'm like, dude, that's it. And then right as that happened, like around the corner, man, there was this lights from heaven, like like here's this open gas station. But we were so lucky, man, because everybody was asleep in the car. I was the driver that night, and like how great would that would have been if I was like, so everybody wake up, guys. We're on the side of the road and out of gas. It's 3 a.m.
Yeah, if I remember right, it was cold too, right?
Yeah, because it was like December. It was like a New Year's party that we had just gone to, and Oh my gosh, what just crazy. But like that was the thing when you're living in different countries, man, just the crazy stuff will just happens, because you have zero control over anything. Are these teams going to pay you? Can you get around? Like, heaven forbid, like you get arrested. Like I knew some guys that like did stupid stuff and get arrested. Now, like you're in jail. Like, oh my gosh, like good luck being in jail in another country. Like jail's bad
Yeah.
enough in the U.S., but some of these other places, man. Like
Yep.
there's one guy, he got mad during the game and he knocked out a ref, and so then he was in jail. And they're like, guess what? You don't get to eat in jail unless you know somebody. Well, he didn't know anybody, so
Wow.
he was in there for like a week. And they're like, you're going to be in here for like a year, and he's losing his mind. And somehow his agent ended up getting him out. But I'm like, man, I'm going to be minding my manners while I'm in these other places.
Yeah, that's probably a good tip to follow. Oh yeah, there's some horror stories about stuff like that, Tyler, for sure. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
Tyler, we covered your book, we covered a bit of your life. So I have a couple final questions here for you, and I'll have Austin ask a couple that I sent to him. But what are your thoughts right now on Penn State basketball? Coach Rhodes, I think they're on the right track. But I've talked to people about this. How Penn State basketball isn't one of the top programs. It's kind of a mystery because the football has so much support, and I don't know if basketball has as much support, but um, how they're not one of the top programs in the country. Like I don't get it. I mean, they have. I feel like they would have every resource in the world for that program. So, but
yeah.
they do seem to be on the right track. Like, what do you think? What do you think about them right now?
Yeah, they've been very up and down, right? I mean, when you kind of look at when I was playing there, they had made the tournament, I think, twice in the 90s, and then they made it. We made it my junior year, 2001, but then it just kind of like almost fell off a cliff for a little while,
Yeah,
and had a couple of just really, really bad, just ugly years. Just wanting to get through those. I remember those. I just felt bad for those guys. And then they were able to get back there, I think around 2011, like 10 years later. But then after that season happened, then it was kind of like, boom, you fall off the cliff again. And so there's been really no consistency of winning, finishing middle top half. And that's always kind of the goal, I think, in a really good conference like the Big Ten. You want to be kind of middle top half, so you're making the tournament consistently, and then you'll have a shot at it. I mean, it's hard to like be Final Four, you know, potential every single year anywhere. I mean, even like historical amazing programs like Duke or Kentucky. I mean, shoot, Kentucky just got knocked
yeah,
off the other day, first round. So, but I think Penn State, and there are a lot of schools that can do it, right? I mean, you see schools like Michigan, Notre Dame that have really good football, but also really good basketball. And Penn State just hasn't been able to get there yet. I thought Coach Shrewsbury did a nice job in the couple years he was here. I mean, he built it up really, really quickly to make a really good run his second year. He had guys like Pickett and Andrew Funk, really good shooter. And so I'm hopeful for Coach Rhodes. I really like him. I've gotten to meet him. I've been a bunch of his practices. My buddy that I played with, Joe Crispin, he's kind of acting like a bit of an offensive coordinator of sorts. We don't usually hear that in basketball, but that's kind of his role he's brought in to do because he loves to get up points, man. He loves it to be entertaining, loves to put points on the board. And when he
yeah,
was coaching at Rowan in New Jersey, I was like, how are things going over there? He's like, we're doing pretty good. He's like, 100 points a game, man. 100 points a game. That's what we're trying to get to. I was like, I love it, man. It wasn't like, hey, we want to win a bunch of games. It was like, we got to score a bunch because his thought process was, okay, the more we score, the wins are going to come. And so I think bringing that mentality to Penn State, if they can separate themselves and play a little differently than some of these other teams, you don't see a lot of like really high scoring teams in the Big Ten. Iowa's a team that plays with a lot of freedom, that plays a fast tempo. And so almost a little bit like that. So they're not there yet. Obviously, for first season in, But I thought being able to put a team together like he did, and to be, kind of a 500 team is what they were about this year. But they had some really good signature wins, like they won that great game at Rec Hall against Illinois,
Yeah.
and who was like 12 or something like that at the time in the country, and so that they showed some really good things. But I think it's going to take a little time for people to kind of see the style that they play. But man, people are attracted to that. Players, I should say, are attracted to that because guys want to play fast. And I would ask Joe, like, how are you getting these guys to your school? Like D3 can be really hard to recruit to, and he's like, man, when you play like an up-tempo style and you give guys freedom, everybody wants to play that way. Nobody's
Yeah.
coming into a team and say, man, I hope we can average 55 points a game and walk the ball off the floor. So my hope is that that can be something that separates them a little bit. And, if they can do that and word starts getting around, I think you're going to find guys that do want to be a part of that. And I think they're really good coaches, good recruiters. So I'm excited to see what happens next with them.
Yeah, and Tyler, I was just playing some of the, and so one thing I do is I go back, and Austin does it too. I go back and watch old Penn State football games, and one, you build knowledge that way, and two, I love Penn State football. That's why I started a podcast about it. But I'm watching the 2001 game against North Carolina. I was playing it a little bit there on the screen, and you were on that team. You were on the team still to this day, the furthest team to ever make it. You guys made it. Yes, you guys made it past the first two rounds, and in that game, you played against now NFL Hall of Famer Julius Peppers. You played against Ronald Curry, and you had the Crispin brothers on your team, who you mentioned. And I was young. I was like 9, 8 years old, but I remember Joe Crispin and how good he was, and I remember him playing in the 3-point contest. I'm sure you remember that too.
Yeah,
I see the
yeah,
video here, Joe Crispin in the 3-point contest, and he killed that. Uh, what was it
yeah.
like? What was it like playing? First of all, what was it like playing in March Madness and then playing against Ronald Curry? I mean, he's one of the best athletes ever. From high school to college, he's like he was almost like a Deion Sanders type. He's football and basketball, and then he was Michael Vick's
Yeah,
teammate in high
yeah.
school. And
Oh wow, yeah.
I think he had a football scholarship offered at Virginia Tech because that's where Mike Vick went.
Jeez.
But what was it like playing in March Madness? I mean, we have it going on right now. It's absolute madness. It really is all month. It's crazy what happens. My Auburn lost in the first round. That was my team, so I'm done pretty much
Oh
now.
man,
But
you done? Yeah. My 9-year-old picked St. Mary's. I think go almost all the way, at least Final Four, and so we felt bad for her. But playing it was amazing. I mean, like that's kind of your whole goal is to just be a part of that. It's such a special thing where the whole country is tuning in, and anything is really possible. When you're playing just a single elimination style, man. And so, and you're playing against teams that you don't normally play against either. So they don't really know you as well as like your conference teams do. And so there's a lot of unknowns. Like going into that first game, we played Providence. We were a 7 seed. They were a 10. And there's like so much excitement. But we're like, man, we don't know this team. Like we never watched Providence or like, play against them or anything. So, and they had like a real big 7-foot center. They had the defensive player of the year as their point guard, and we're there's like a little bit of fear, like, oh my gosh, like you don't want to go in there and just you know uh, look like a bunch of idiots and exit first round, because then you're like, oh, like it's over too quick. We really were so driven to do something special because for our seniors especially, Joe, Titus Ivory, Jossie Kleinherd, Scott Witkowski, that was their last go,
yeah,
and I was a junior. I was 1 year behind those guys, but man, we were so driven to do something, and we knocked those guys off, and then all of a sudden you're facing North Carolina, and about 0.0% of people picked us to beat them, as you might imagine. Like, why would you? They had been number one for almost, a month or two during the year. And, but it was like, we were playing down in New Orleans in the Superdome. And I remember shooting free throws like during the game, and it was such a massive stadium because it's for football, and they had the big jumbotron right behind where the glass backboards was. So as I'm shooting free throws, I like see myself shooting free throws like through the glass. I'm like, this is so disorienting. I'm pretty sure I missed my first one or two. It's like kind of like somehow zone yourself out and just really focus on the rim. But it was crazy. You're in this stadium that seats like 60 something thousand people, and just like, oh my god, like this is it. Like we've kind of made it. But that was awesome, getting that win. I think North Carolina just kind of underestimated us a little bit that game, and we were just, man, with the Crispin brothers and Titus. I mean, those guys, we were just fearless. Like, hey, we don't care how we're going. We can beat anybody. And we'd had some good wins that year too. We'd beaten Michigan State like a week or so before, who was third in the country. So we were kind of like a sneaky, dangerous team because we didn't have like a bunch of huge guys or like huge name recruits, but I think we just had a bunch of guys that were fearless.
Yeah, I mean, to go up against a team like that, they were the number 2 seed, and again, I mean, it was North Carolina. They've always been good, and I believe Dean Smith was the coach at that time, right?
It wasn't Dean. It was Matt Doherty. Actually, Matt Doherty was there for a little while.
Okay. But I believe Dean Smith, he coached Jordan, right?
Yeah. Dean was there forever. He was like the Mike Krzyzewski, of his era. Like, just was there forever. Won some titles. Just amazing, amazing coach.
Yeah. So at that time, you're right with the competition that you guys faced. It was just, I mean, that's why it's March Madness, because you guys were very good too, but that team was just stacked, with all the guys that they had. And Julius Peppers, he was the first pick in the NFL draft. You know how big of a freak he was. How was it playing against him? You remember getting hit by him? I'm sure you do.
Oh, that guy, he was like, his arms were bigger than my legs. I mean, the guy was just like 100% muscle, zero body fat, and just knew how to move. He actually had the best game of anybody on that team. He had like 20 and 10 or something. Brendan Haywood was a really big center, 7-foot center. He went on to play in the NBA for like, I don't know, 12, 14 years, something, like really, really good. So on paper, it looked like we didn't stand a chance, but I think we were just really hungry to kind of prove ourselves. We played a little bit different. I think they were kind of like Penn State. Like, I mean, who's getting nervous about playing a 7 seed Penn State when you're North Carolina? You're one of the legendary schools. And the funny thing, we had beaten Kentucky earlier that year too. We played Kentucky at their place in like the second game of the season, and again, same thing, just really underestimated. So that's what makes March so fun. I mean, we've had such a good time watching games. I'm married with 3 girls, and we all fill out brackets, and it's high stakes. We're playing for like milkshakes and Chick-fil-A, and but our girls really, I think we're gonna turn on games behind us actually as they start to come on. But it's it's so fun just cheering for the underdog and seeing what's possible in these crazy situations. I love it.
Austin, you want to ask those last 2 questions that I sent you?
Yeah, I thought up a couple while we're going to. I think that'll be good. First one, we'll kind of, we're just talking about college and the tournament and all this kind of stuff. Just big picture, generally speaking, how do you feel about the current landscape with NIL, the transfer portal, all that stuff going on in college basketball, but obviously college athletics in general?
Yeah, man, what a wild topic it is right now. It almost kind of feels like the Wild West a little bit. And I wonder if in like 10, 20 years, we're gonna look back and be like, man, remember when all this started and guys were getting, wanted $5,000 just to visit a school and stuff. And, it is crazy. part of me, I do like the idea that guys can basically have some kind of a revenue share, because there's so much money out there. Yes, a college scholarship is valuable, but I do like the idea of some kind of revenue share with players and being able to capitalize. I think it's ridiculous that, before, if guys had like a YouTube channel or something, like NCAA was like, no, you can't make money on a YouTube channel. It's like, that's crazy to me. NCAA has always had really stupid rules. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
It's
When
a
I
good
was
way
in
to put
college,
it.
they said, "Hey, you're only allowed to play in one summer league." And I'm like, "Why?" Like, so I could play one night a week in my summer league in Chicago. I'm like, there's like two or three other leagues I could be playing more and getting better. And it's like they just had rules for rules. It was so dumb. Um, and so just things like that. It's like, who's coming up with this stuff? So I do like that it's changed. Um, it seems just a little bit Wild West to me right now. So I don't have the best answers for it. I'm not like super involved in it, but um, I it's kind of funny to think that these players, my buddies who are coaches, they're like, our players are making more money than we are, And it's
Seriously.
like kind of like in the NBA, the players kind of have the power, right? Those are the guys that kind of like drive things. And if LeBron wants his coach gone or whatever, like that's a real thing that happens. And you wonder, is that going to kind of be the landscape also for college sports in some ways? Are the players that are, kind of controlling things in the big names going to be able to do that at some point? I don't think they're there yet, but maybe.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. I think it's one of those, and we've seen it with a million different things throughout history. You kind of have this one model that's maybe very extreme, and like especially on some of the silly rules, we're like overly authoritarian on one in one direction, and then thing that happens first is like the pendulum really swings hard in the complete opposite direction, where it's like authoritarian and it's like no rules whatsoever. It's like
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
the best answer lies somewhere between the two extremes. We would
yeah,
probably all agree to that. Just kind of figuring out, well, we have two problems: figuring out where that middle ground is, and then the second thing is finding someone to arbitrate and enforce that middle ground, because the NCAA is pretty clear they can't do it.
yeah,
They've been
yeah,
hit with the injunctions in court and all this type of stuff. They can't enforce these rules and things. So who does it? Is it the
yeah.
legislators? Um,
I
uh,
know.
and that's always for me anyway. Probably for many, that's always a questionable solution too, because we know how quick they
I
get things
know.
done.
I
So
know. But oh, it's crazy. And like even like for example, uh, I'm trying to go speak at an elementary school and just have a couple of Penn State guys come with me because it's March Madness, that whole thing. The kids would love it because they're local. And my buddy's like, "Hey, I got to run this through compliance." I'm like, "Go to an elementary school, like." Guys are getting paid to play basketball. And, like we got to do a bunch of paperwork and checks to do that. Or like he was even saying, "Hey, I want to go to the high school football game, but I got to be careful because it's high school kids." I'm like, again, they're already getting paid. Like, what are we worried is going to happen?
yeah, I mean, you're at this stage where it's like you're kind of already there. You're worried about a problem that like doesn't really exist anymore based upon
Yeah,
where we are. I mean,
yeah,
I understand the whole rigmarole of compliance and all that kind of stuff. It is a lot of, and I'm sure there are instances where there's unnecessary red tape and a lot of that stuff too. Like some of these things just seem very obvious, um, but yeah, it's a wild thing. I just kind of wanted to know your take. Um, the second thing that I wanted to ask is a little bit more big picture, a little bit more life experience related. Playing abroad as much as you did, kind of bopping all over the world, really, and also specifically Europe to a large degree. What kind of perspective about the United States or about the world in general um, did that give to you?
I think it really showed me how fortunate, how blessed we are to live in the U.S. Was the theme that came back to me every single time. Playing in Holland, or I was in Italy for a little while. I was in uh, South America. I was in Japan for like 5 years, and the opportunities that we have in the U.S. are just unbelievable. Like I was talking to a coach one time that has coached in China for years and years, and we were talking about this Chinese player, and he's like, "Yeah, but they're going to make him a coach." And I'm like, "Oh, well, what if he doesn't want to be a coach?" Like, you don't really get to choose in China. They just kind of tell you, "Hey, this is what you're going to do." I'm like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's crazy." And then being like, you walk into a grocery store here, and there's a whole aisle with like 800 different cereals you can choose from, and down there might be like four. So I always came back to, man, we have so much opportunity. We have so many freedoms here that the rest of the world, they don't have that. Now some countries do to varying degrees, but I was always just so thankful for what we have here in the U.S., because I think so many people take it for granted. If others had a chance to really travel and see um, what the rest of the world is like. I'm not saying it's terrible everywhere. It's not. I really loved all the places I played, but there, we take for granted so much here. So I really, almost daily, just try to appreciate what we have here, and those freedoms. But that was a big thing, and yeah, just and in the same way. A lot of people around the world kind of all want the same things. They want to be able to enjoy their family and enjoy their work, and live their lives. And they do it in different styles and different ways. But when I was down in Uruguay, I didn't even know they played pro basketball down there, but it's in South America. And I remember being down there. I'm like, these people, they want to enjoy their life and have their family and go to the beach, and it's really no different from us in the States in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think that's important too. I mean, myself, I don't know if Mark and I really talked a bunch about this specifically, but I got a big list of places that I wanna go see and visit, and hopefully, get afforded some perspective as well, about the U.S. and the world at large too, and just experience a lot of good things, and kind of enhance the opportunity that we all have with being here and things. But one final thing, okay, and then we can wrap. And it's a big one. Mark and I talked about it. We had a good chuckle. We thought it'd be interesting. I think I feel where you're gonna lean, but we got to bring it up. GOAT debate, NBA, Jordan, LeBron.
Ooh, for me, it feels a little too easy, but I will always say Jordan. I think no matter what LeBron does, is that bad? I don't know. If LeBron gets like two more titles, maybe, but I don't see that happening. But I grew up in the Jordan era, so I'm biased, of course. But that guy, he was just such a killer, man. There's a book that his trainer wrote, Tim Grover, that Jordan's trainer. It's called Relentless. If you ever get a chance to check it out, it's easy read. But he just talks about how he was just such a killer, man. Like he in some ways he didn't care like what others felt or thought or whatever. He was like, listen, I'm going to be the best. We're going to be the best, and get on board or get out of my freaking way. And LeBron does a lot of things better than Jordan does. Like obviously with rebounding, his passing is amazing. I think he is such a fire. And Jordan, I think, was a different kind of player, just more killer instincts. It's just kind of not that LeBron doesn't have that. I mean, LeBron's phenomenal. Man. The guy is like insane. All the triple doubles and stuff that he has, he's so complete. I mean, Jordan didn't have any weaknesses either, though. I mean, he was defensive player of the year and could do anything he wanted to do. But I don't know. For me, yeah, Jordan just he wins out. But I don't hate on the LeBron lovers either. He's fun to
Yeah,
watch.
yeah. No, I mean, and for me again, I was born in '93, so I mean, I was very young at the tail end of Jordan's career, at least with the Bulls. But I'd be inclined to agree, given all the information we have, looking back at all the old game tape and all this kind of stuff. Um, I think you can appreciate everybody. You can appreciate LeBron. You can appreciate Jordan. I think the obvious comparison. I mean, Kobe Bryant was much more likened to Jordan than LeBron. It's a much more kind of dead even comparison because they played the same position, they were same style, by design. Like that's literally what Kobe did. He's like, this guy's the best. I'm gonna try to do this, but also better. It's like I don't know that the second coming was as good as the original, but it was pretty darn good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of like that across sports. I don't I don't necessarily see the utility because everyone kind of has their own kind of weighting kind of schematic on what they weight highly, as far as kind of putting it into the algorithm and figuring out who was the greatest. But I'd probably give that edge to Jordan as well. And it's just like the things that you watched him do, and it was one of those things where it's just a different mindset completely to where it was. Look, when it gets right down to it, we're losing all the pressure, win, go home, whatever. I'll just take it all. And I'm cool with that. Like, that's fine. I was put here to take all that on my shoulders and to just get it done. And there's a lot of times you don't get it done. That's everybody. But you keep coming. You never get discouraged, and you never lose that chip. You never lose that edge. You're always willing to do it. And that's a special trait that I don't think a ton of people have.
Yeah. Both guys are amazing to watch. And Jordan's mental toughness, just how he would get into other people's head, and it seemed like nobody would get into his head. Like nobody affected his game like ever. Like he was in full control. Which I like the amount of trash talk and stuff that happens in the NBA is just it's unbelievable. And man, he was just he would go at anybody and everybody, and just to kind of test you and see. And I mean, he was alpha male. And so I don't know, it's pretty awesome being able to see him do his thing in Chicago growing up.
And piggybacking on that, I always found it was almost like, trash talk was super commonplace, and there was a lot of great trash talkers and all this kind of stuff. But it almost seemed like even the best trash talkers, especially their teammates, were like, hey, you can trash talk anybody, but you don't trash talk that guy. He's going to make all of us pay for it. For your mistake, we're all going to pay for it, and he's going to whoop all of us, and there's not anything you can do to stop it. That's just special because I don't really think there was really anybody else like that. Kobe, maybe to an extent. I don't really hear too much about that with any of the new guys, with LeBron, or not really new. I mean, he's been in the league for 20 some years, but the KDs and all these guys, great players, great shooters, incredible skills. Because we talked about some of the cryotherapies and some of the newer recovery modalities and things. I sometimes imagine a world where Jordan did all the housekeeping things, and what I mean by that is the recovery stuff, prioritizing the sleep, the advanced nutrition stuff, all the stuff that LeBron James has done and has been able to play very consistently for 2 decades plus. What would have that looked like? You know what I mean? Like, what would have that been? And again, you got to factor everything in. We talk about all the defensive teams and all the defensive accolades Jordan had, in an era where you could play very physical defense and the hand check and everything else. But, it is a different game as far as, from the defensive perspective. It's definitely a little bit easier, I think, to kind of to be an offensive player now, just kind of like it is in the NFL, to be honest with you. I mean, to be a receiver, it's way better than it was in 2000 when Ray Lewis was killing you if you came over the middle. A little different. But yeah, I'm on board. What are your thoughts on that, Mark? And then we can wrap.
Yeah, I mean, he's not even he's number 3, LeBron, in my opinion. It's Jordan. Well, that's the thing. There's so many guys before Jordan. I don't think has ever said he's the best ever. He has so much respect for guys before him, like Jerry West. I mean, Will Chamberlain, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. I mean, those guys were so good. I think the greatest player, I don't even know how you can pick someone, honestly. I mean, Larry Bird was so good. Magic Johnson, and I'm not a big basketball guy, but yeah, I think you got to give it to Jordan, then Kobe, and then LeBron. So the thing about LeBron, he's just such a freak athlete. I mean, the dude's like what 6'8", and he's just an absolute athlete. I mean, he's everything that you could ask for. Speed, just he's got the jumps. He can shoot. I mean, it's crazy. But Tyler, you're 6'8", so just playing like a guard, like you said earlier, playing like a guard at your height or higher. I mean, that's insane. So.
Yeah, and his size, he's like 265, but with that kind of leaping ability, it's like it's mind blowing what he's capable of doing. And I've played against some big guys and athletic guys, and I'm blown away. Like because when you're like face to face and guarding them, and then they go make a move and just like launch over like three guys, like it blows your mind what's possible. So yeah, he's got some amazing gifts and really maxed out everything too. I think Jordan was the same way, just completely. He was like the epitome of like incredible athlete, but then incredible mental toughness. And when you put those two together, it's like not everybody has both. Sometimes they have one or the other or different amounts of the other, but both those guys just seem to have both.
He's actually 6'9". My bad. 6'9", 250. Crazy. But
almost like it was out of a lab.
Yep. All right, Tyler. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it, man. It's good to catch up with you. I'll probably see you in the gym here from time to time, but you keep doing your thing with your business, and you just keep doing you, man. You're a great guy, and go buy his book. Again, it's called For Traveling. Get it on Amazon. It's a great read. So.
Well, thank you guys, Mark and Austin. Man, you guys were awesome. A lot of fun to hang out with you guys, and I really appreciate it. It's always fun to kind of do these things and talk some sports, talk some life, and I wish you guys nothing but the best, man. Thank you.
Yep. All right, Tyler. You take care.
You guys too. See you.
See ya.
Take care.